Okay, so this is Chem 101 Prelim exam. This is for lecture class. I hope nakuha niyo yung answers dito. So number 1, this is true or false. Any mixture, whether homogeneous or heterogeneous, can be created and then separated by chemical means into pure components without changing the identities of the components. So for this question, the correct answer is false. And the reason why the statement is false is that when you say mixture class, yes, it can be separated. They can be separated, but it should be by physical means. So this is not about chemical means when it comes to the separation of our mixtures. Physical means lang kasi the components of our mixtures are being combined together by physical means also. So pag ihiwalay natin, physical means pa rin. Next, number 2, chemical changes occur when a chemical reaction causes bonds between atoms to break or to form. So this statement naman is true. When you say chemical changes, this occurs if there is either a formation of a bond between two elements or two atoms, two or more atoms, or it can have a breakage of this bond. So for example, if you have hair rebonding, though after the process you will have a straight hair, for example, but ang iba nalilito kasi parang physical change lang siya kasi buhok pa rin naman siya. But since there is breakage of bonds between the proteins sa hair natin, then that is a chemical change. So this one is a true or correct statement. Number 3, inorganic chemistry deals with all substances in which carbon is present, while organic chemistry deals with substances that do not contain carbon. So this one naman is syempre false kasi baliktad. Always remember pag sinabing inorganic chemistry, we are dealing with non-carbon containing substances. While if you say carbon containing substances, we are dealing with organic chemistry there. So in the finals, we will have purely organic chemistry because this subject, Chem 101, is a combination of inorg and organic chemistry. Now, number 4, in every measurement, a number is followed by a unit. So, syempre, this is true. You have learned that one in your activity 2 sa measurement, di ba? When you say measurement, sa chemistry, numbers are meaningless if they don't contain units. So always remember, if you are dealing with measurements, especially in chemistry, you should have to place a correct unit after each number. Next, the size of a degree on the Fahrenheit scale is only 180 over 100, or if we simplify it, that's 9/5 of a degree on the Celsius scale. So this one naman is true. So that is why if we convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, diba, we use a fixed number, 9/5, a fixed ratio for that. And that is due to the size in their scale. So 180 over 100 dito sa Celsius scale. Next, all atoms can be identified by the number of protons and neutrons they contain. So this is true. If you have questions, you can ask ha. And if, for example, meron kayo nakita dyan na supposedly tama kayo pero minalian kayo ng Schoology, i-take note nyo na lang muna. And then after the rationale later, we will be checking your submission so that we can change your scores before tayo mag-compute ng grade. Okay? Again, all atoms can be identified by the number of protons and neutrons they contain. So this is true because when you say atoms, ang ating identification for that is always actually the protons. Kasi when you say elements, hindi nagbabago ang number of protons nila. But at the same case, since we have the so-called atomic mass, and atomic mass represents the numbers of protons and neutrons, then yes, we can use the two in the identification of our atoms. Okay? Next. Oops, wait lang. Ayan. Next, empirical formulas are the true formulas of our molecules. So this one naman is, syempre, false. Because the true formula for our molecules is called the molecular formula. Pag sinabing empirical formula, class, it is the simplified formula. You cannot see there the exact number of atoms present in your compound. Again, because it is simplified. So that is not the true formula for the molecule. Next, we have an acid can be described as a substance that yields hydroxide ions when dissolved in water. So just like the previous question, this is also false because when you say acid, the most common definition for acid is that it is a substance that yields hydrogen ion. Again, it's hydrogen ion for acid. While if you say hydroxide ion, we are referring to bases or alkaline substances. So this one is false. Next, the charges of the transition metals are important when you are determining the formula of a covalent compound. Again, the charges of the transition metals are important when you are determining the formula of a covalent compound. So this one, class, is false. When you say covalent compound, it is a compound which contains non-metal and non-metal only. Again, pag covalent compound, yung kanyang components are both non-metals. So definitely, we don't need the charges of the transition metals here. If a substance, if a compound contains metals, we call it inorganic compounds. Hindi siya covalent compounds. Other name for covalent compounds, we have the molecular compound. So I hope alam niyo pa yon, hindi niyo pa nakalimutan kasi the tendency of the students is the students are kanang makalimutan na after the exam. Past is past. So I hope hindi niyo siya makalimutan because we still need these things for the succeeding lessons natin, especially for midterms. So next, number 10, metal cations take their names from the elements. So this one is true. When you name cations, we just use their names, kung anong element sila, and we just include the word ion or cations in their name. So just like when you say sodium ion, syempre the name is still coming from the name of the element sodium. Again, we just include ion in the name. So this is true. Again, if you have questions, you can ask you can ask sa chat, or you can just raise your hand and unmute yourself. Next, with the important exception of the ammonium ion, that's NH4 positive, all cations of interest to us are derived from non-metal atoms. So this one naman is false. So bakit false? Kasi our cations, our positively charged ions are our metals. Again, they are our metals. And one exception for that is the ammonium. Ammonium ion is a polyatomic ion. Other cations natin are metal. So pag sinabing non-metal class, they are our anions, meaning they are negatively charged. So I hope nasundan pa yan. And naalala pa yan hanggang ngayon. Next, number 12, a solution is a heterogeneous mixture of two or more substances. Again, a solution is a heterogeneous mixture of two or more substances. This one, the correct answer is false. Anong false man na siya? Because when you say a solution class, it is always a homogeneous mixture. Again, a solution is always a homogeneous mixture. You will have a uniform appearance here. One example of that is the sodium chloride solution. When you dissolve sodium chloride, or commonly known as table salt, in water, you will have a mixture that has a uniform appearance. So that is why when you say solution, always siyang homogeneous mixture. So I hope that is clear. Next, which of the following is a substance that cannot be separated into simpler substances by chemical means? Again, which of the following substance which of the following is a substance that cannot be separated into simpler substances by chemical means? When you answer a multiple choices na question, class, you can do elimination or you can just analyze. When you say cannot be separated, meaning we are referring to a substance that is the simplest among them. Simplest na siya. So, dili nato siya ma-separate. And when you say simplest substance, syempre, that is our element. So, the element is made up of a specific type of atoms. And though atoms contain subatomic particles, the element class cannot be separated even if we are using chemical means. So, that is why we call it the simplest substance. Next, which of the following is considered as evidence that a chemical change has occurred? So again, we have here the chemical change. Evidence ang hinahanap natin. So syempre, it's not change in shape, it's not change in form, it's not also change in size, because those three are evidences that physical change takes place. Now, when we have change in odor, basically we have a chemical change here. So for example, if you have food class na panis, so even though it's the same kind of food, but you can see that there is, for example, the action of the bacteria already, and that we cannot reverse it back to the original form niya, chemical change na to siya. And one thing na, or one evidence na ma-observe natin na napanis na talaga yung food is there is a change in odor. So that is class and evidence that there is a chemical change. Okay? Next, number 15. What is a compound? So how do we define compound? Yung exam nyo lang is medyo mahaba, no? So this one requires patience and your analytical skills. So compound, hanapin natin yung definition ng ating compound. So first, it is a substance that cannot be separated into simpler substances by chemical means. So this is not the correct answer. Bakit? Kasi compound, it can be separated. Again, it can be separated, and we are going to use chemical means when we want to separate compounds, because the elements there in the compound are combined together by chemical process. So chemical means din natin siya i-separate. Next, it is a substance composed of atoms of two or more elements chemically united in fixed proportions. So this one can be the answer. This one can be the answer, but let's check later if we have other answers pa. Again, this can be the answer kasi when you say compound, yes, it is a combination of two or more elements and then they are chemically combined with each other. Next, it is a combination of two or more substances in which the substances retain their distinct identities. It is a combination of two or more substances in which the substances retain their distinct identities. When you say compound class, since there is a chemical reaction that took place, you can no longer determine these elements or these atoms. So when we have chemical reactions to form compounds, these substances or these elements lose their identities. We can just see them if we can just observe their identities if they are being separated. So this one cannot be the answer also. Next, it is a change in the state of properties of matter without any accompanying change in its chemical composition. That one, the last one there is the definition of a physical change. Again, physical change siya. If there is a change in properties, but there is no change in chemical composition, it's just a physical change. So the correct answer is letter B. Pag sinabing compound, always yan siya combination ng two or more atoms which are chemically combined with each other. Next, which of the following is considered as an intensive property? Before we'll answer this, let's just have a little review of what intensive property is. Pag sinabing intensive property, please do not forget in means independent, meaning it is independent from the amount of the substance being considered. So it doesn't matter if you have 1 glass of this substance or two glasses of this substance. When you say intensive property, it remains the same, whether you have a lot of this substance or you have little. So, independent siya. Wala siya ilabot kung unsa kadaghan imuhang substance. So, in here, we are looking for the intensive property. Example of intensive property. So, definitely, it's not mass because mass is dependent to the amount of the substance. The more substance you have, the greater mass you'll have also. The same thing with volume. If you have more volume, you have more substance, meaning you will have greater volume also. So the correct answer here is actually temperature, because the temperature is independent whether you have a lot of substance or not. So the length and the sizes are also extensive property. So we call that extensive property if it is dependent to the amount of the substance. When you say dependent, nag-change yung inyong measurement kapag you will have a lot of substance present. Okay? Next, differentiate intensive property from extensive property. So this type of question is an example of a Morse type na multiple choices. So sa college, you are being, what to call that? Tinitrain. You are being trained to answer Morse type questions, class, because in the board exam, most of the questions are like this. So ingani siya mostly sa board exam. Kaya even if first year pa lang kayo, you are trained to answer these types of question. So you have to read carefully the sentences there, and you have to choose kung ano yung tama sa kanila. So number 1 sentence, intensive property does not depend on how much matter is being considered, while extensive property depends on how much matter is being considered. So this statement is actually true. So sinabi ko na to kanina, in for independent, meaning it does not depend to the amount of substance being considered. While extensive property is the other way around. So it is dependent kung gaano kadami ang matter mo. Next, extensive property does not depend on how much matter is being considered, while an intensive property depends on how much matter is being considered. So this one is not correct kasi it's the complete opposite of your first statement. Then thirdly, we have intensive properties such as mass and volume depend on the amount of matter being considered or being measured, while extensive properties, excuse me, such as density and color do not depend on the amount of the substance present. So this one is also incorrect. Intensive properties, again, independent sila. And mass and volume are examples of extensive properties. So that is wrong. So we only have the first statement here na correct, which means that the answer is letter D, that is 1 only. Again, that is 1 only. So I hope nakuha niyo siya. This is how you answer, class, a Morse type na question. Again, that's how you answer a Morse type na question. Next, number 18. Which of the following questions will help you classify matter? So, alin dito sa kanila yung pwede nating gamitin na question to classify matter. I hope in your lecture class, you can still remember the diagram. There is this diagram in your lecture na ginagamit natin to classify matter. So number 1, can it be separated by a physical process? So this question is actually correct kasi when you say can it be separated by a physical process, we are classifying matter whether they are pure substance or a mixture. Because if you can separate it via a physical process, then it can be a mixture there. So pwede yan siya. Next, does the property depend on the amount of the substance? This is actually also correct. Kasi ginagamit natin itong question na ito if we want to classify whether the property of the substance is extensive or intensive. So, kasali kasi yan siya, class, sa pag-classify ng matter natin. Okay? Again, kasali siya sa pag-classify ng matter natin kung extensive ba siya na property or intensive. And then, can the property be determined without changing the identities or the identity of the substance? So, this is correct. Before actually you can classify it whether intensive or intensive property siya, tatanungin muna natin kung meron bang changes sa identity of the substance. Magkakaroon ba ng changes sa identity or wala? Physical property ba siya or chemical property? So kasali pa rin yan siya when we are going to classify our matter. So definitely this is 1, 2, and 3. The correct answer is letter B. Okay? So again, if you have corrections, please take notes so that we can change your scores before the computation of grade. By the way, the passing here, this is over 80. So the passing is 40. Again, the passing kasi is 50% of the total number of points. So since this is over 80, the passing is 40. You can look at your scores. I hope you can see your scores. Tell me later if you cannot see your scores para makita nyo and ma-assess ninyo kung nakapasa ba kayo sa exam nyo sa lecture. So we have another one here na naka-Morse type. Differentiate the states of matter according to arrangement of particles. Again, differentiate the states of matter according to arrangement of particles. So number one, solid and liquid particles are close to one another and gas particles are far apart. So definitely this is correct. Basically, solid particles are close to one another, and liquid particles, though they have spaces in between, but you can still say that they are close to each other. And since gas particles are in constant motion, so definitely also their particles are far apart. Okay. Number two, solid particles are essentially in fixed position. Liquid particles are free to move relative to other particles. And gas particles have complete freedom of motion. So this one naman is also correct kasi remember, when you say solid, when it comes to the movement of particles, solid particles don't really move kasi they are in fixed position. While the liquid particles, since they have spaces in between, they can actually move also. And syempre si gas particles, yung pinaka-free to move to any direction. So this is again also correct. So number three, solid particles are tightly packed with ordered arrangement. And then liquid particles have a disordered arrangement and gas particles have a totally disordered arrangement. So this one is also correct. When you say solid, that is the reason why they have fixed class na particles and then they don't really move. So kasi they are tightly packed. The particles for solid are tightly packed with ordered arrangement. And that is the reason why they also have their own distinct shape. While the liquid, so since they just retain the shape of the container, so meron silang disordered arrangement. And lastly sa gas, ito talaga, grabe na yung disorderly na arrangement ng particles. So this is still 1, 2, and 3. Do you have questions for this one? Anyone na may question or clarification so far? Wala pa so far. So let's have the corrections later. The measure of how hot or cold something feels is called, syempre, temperature. Again, if we want to know how hot or cold something feels is, that's what we call temperature. Okay? Next, milliliters and liters are metric units used to describe which type of measurement. If you look at the choices, syempre you can easily answer here na volume siya. Again, we have here volume. That's milliliters and liters. So for time, syempre we use either seconds, minutes, or hour. For mass, we have grams, kilograms, and so on. And density, since density is an intensive property, it's a combination of two. So pwede siyang gram per ml or grams per cubic centimeter. Okay? And then we have temperature, syempre, we only have three here, Kelvin, Fahrenheit, and Celsius. Again, Kelvin, Fahrenheit, and Celsius. Next, a single system on which all scientists all over the world agree for units of measurement is called, syempre, the SI unit. Again, the SI unit. But what do you mean by SI unit? It's International System of Units. So the best answer here is letter D. Again, if you are answering a multiple choices na question, do not just answer directly na makita ninyo, oh, SI unit. So you just click automatically this one. But always remember that the meaning for SI unit is the International System of Units. So the best answer here is letter D. So please look at your answers. If nag-answer na mo diretso pagkakita ninyo sa SI unit or wala, you look for the best one. Okay. Next, we have which is the correct formula for converting degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius. Let me just fix my writing pad so that I can write sa screen. Okay, pag sinabing we want to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, so we have here Celsius is equal to 9/5 times, sorry. Let me delete this one. We will start with degrees Fahrenheit. So degrees Fahrenheit minus 32 times, this is 5/9. So let us look at the choices kung saan siya mag-fall. We have here degrees Celsius equals degrees Fahrenheit minus 32 times 5/9. So automatically, this one will be the correct answer. Please do not forget that. Number 24, determine the number of significant figures of 5.730 times 10 raised to the power of 13 atoms. So class, this is a scientific notation, and in scientific notation, the numbers na nasa capital letter N are actually significant. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 4 significant figures here. So the answer is letter D. Now, how about this one? The number 0.032040 has how many significant figures? The things that you need to consider here are, number 1, all non-zero digits are significant. Number 2, in between zeros are significant. Number 3, leading zeros are not significant. When you say leading zeros, those are zeros that comes first before the non-zero digits. And then lastly, the trailing zeros or yung zeros na nasa last will become significant if you have the presence of your decimal point. So this one is not included. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we only have 5 significant figures for number 25. Nasundan pa? Or natulog na mo din ha? Any question? Wala.
None po, ma'am.
Okay.
None po, ma'am.
Let us continue. Number 26. Use the approximate rules to report the result of the following computation. So this is mathematics, so just use the PEMDAS here. Syempre, we will start with the parentheses. So for the parentheses, we have 43.221 minus 1.6. That is 41.621. Before natin siya i-divide with 11.2. Divided by 11.2, the answer here is 3.716160714. But we have to use the rules for the significant figures. Now, our higher operation here is division. So we will be using the rule that states, now, if you are going to round off your final answer, you have to follow the list number of significant figures in the given. So we have 3 givens here, 43.221, 1.6, and 11.2. If we will count the significant figures for this one, syempre, we have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one, we have 2. And this one, we have 3. Again, we are dealing with significant figures. So the list one is 2, meaning we have 1 and 2. So hanggang dito ka lang dapat. 3.7. We will not add 1 because the next digit is 1. It's a small value. So again, dili na ta mag-add og 1 sa 7. So again, the correct answer here is 3.7. And we have this one here, 3.7. That's the correct answer. I hope nakuha nyo yan pag solve ninyo. Next, which of the following refers to how closely 2 or more measurements of the same quantity agree with one another. Again, agree with one another. We are not referring into the true value. So kung with each other lang, meaning we are referring into precision. Again, that's the definition for precision. Next, we have describe metal. Again, describe metal. This is another Morse type na question here. So first, metals are good conductor of heat and electricity. This is correct. That's the most common description of a metal. Again, those substances are good conductor of heat and electricity. So definitely the second question, the second statement is incorrect. And then lastly, metal is an element that readily forms negative ions or anions. So this is naman incorrect. Kasi our metals form cations or positively charged ion. So for example, our lithium. Lithium is a metal. It belongs to group 1 in the periodic table. And ang ion niya dyan is positive 1. So cation dapat siya. Which means the correct answer here is letter D, 1 only. Again, 1 only tayo for this question. Next, number 29, which of the following describes an ion? Alin naman dito ang nagde-describe ng ating ion? So, this one again is another Morse type na question. Number 1, it refers to atoms that have the same atomic number but different mass number. Definitely this is not correct. This is the definition of our isotopes. Okay, our isotopes have the same atomic number but they have different mass numbers because they have different numbers of neutrons. So that is incorrect. Next, it is a charged atom or molecule. This is the best definition of our ions. Kapag yung atoms natin or your molecules natin nagkaroon ng charge, tinatawag natin silang ions. Next, it is the total number of protons and neutrons. So definitely this is also incorrect. So again, this is also incorrect because when you say total number of protons and neutrons, we are talking about the atomic mass, or we call it mass number or atomic weight. So we only have the second statement as correct. So we have letter A for number 29. Next, number 30. Which of the following describe isotopes? So, alin naman dito yung nagde-describe ng isotopes? Number 1, these are atoms that have the same atomic number but different mass number. So, sinabi ko na yan kanina. That's the definition of isotopes class. Kagaya ng hydrogen, meron siyang tatlong isotopes. The protium or the hydrogen itself, the deuterium or the heavy hydrogen, and the tritium or the radioactive hydrogen. Mga isotopes yan sila ni hydrogen, which means they have the same atomic number, which is 1, but they have different mass numbers because they have different amount or different numbers of neutrons. Next, these atoms these are atoms that have the same atomic mass but different atomic numbers. This is the other way around. So this is incorrect. Always remember yung the same sa isotopes ay yung kanilang atomic numbers, which represents the number of protons. And it means that they are the same element. Okay, they are the same element. Kagaya ng hydrogen. Hydrogen yun sila lahat. It's just that they have different mass numbers. Next, it is the total number of protons and neutrons. So this definitely is incorrect also. So what is our answer here? 1 only. Okay. Wait lang ha. Let me just drink water before we will move on to number 31. Number 31 na tayo. Hanggang 62 pala ito. Nangangalahati pa lang tayo, class. So let us move on. Which of the following are considered strong acids? By the way, if you say strong acids, class, we are referring most of the time into acids na inorganic acids, meaning these are acids that don't contain carbon in their structure. That's the first thing that you have to take note if you are going to classify acids as to whether they are strong or weak. So, syempre, number 1, hydrochloric acid, this is automatically a strong one. Nitric acid is also a strong one. As you can see, it does not contain carbon also in its structure or in its formula. And then this one, HI, is hydroiodic acid. It is also a strong one. And lastly, we have CH3COOH. This is what you call the acetic acid. So, look at the formula. Meron siyang carbon. So, acetic acid, ito yung nakikita natin na acid sa vinegar, is a weak acid. It's still acidic, but it's a weak acid. So, the correct answer here is just 1, 2, and 3. Where is that? 1, 2, and 3. It's letter D. Next, which of the following is not considered as a transition metal? Class, yung mga transition metals natin, yun yung nasa gitna ng periodic table. Again, nasa gitna ng periodic table. So, alin dyan yung nasa gitna? Siyempre, iron is located at the center. The same thing with copper. Chromium also, but aluminum belongs to group 3A. It is located below boron. So it is not a transition metal. So we only have 1, 2, and 3 here na transition metals, but take note of the question, not considered. So ang correct answer dito ay 4, aluminum. 4 only, which means that is letter C. So I hope hindi nyo nakalimutan na ang hinahanap dyan ay hindi transition metal. Next, which of the following refers to the collective term for protons and neutrons? So these two, they are both located in the nucleus. That is the reason why we call them nucleons. Again, these two subatomic particles are found inside the nucleus. That is why collectively we call them nucleons. Next, we have which of the following refers to the basic unit of an element that can enter into chemical combination? Again, which of the following refers to the basic unit ng ating element or ng ating matter? Syempre, wala nang iba. We have here the atom. That is atom class. Next, which of the following refers to the total number of neutrons and protons present in the nucleus of an atom of an element? So total number ni protons plus total number ni neutrons, tinatawag natin yang mass number. So other name for mass number, atomic weight or atomic mass. Do not forget ha, ang atomic number, protons lang. Ang isotopes, these are elements na the same ang atomic number pero different ang mass number. But when you say nucleons, tinatawag natin, this is the collective term for the neutrons and the protons na nasa nucleus. Pero pag ang hinahanap na class total number, we are referring to the mass number. And syempre, lastly, electrons, they are the subatomic particles na negatively charged. Okay? Next, number 36 is another Morse type na question. So you expect a lot of this, especially in your professional subjects in preparation for the board exam. Next, which of the following describes the hypothesis about the nature of matter of Dalton's atomic theory? This one is for the work of John Dalton. So number 1, elements are composed of extremely large particles called atoms. So definitely this is not correct. What makes it incorrect? The word large. Because atoms were not described as large particles. Atoms were always described as small particles even in the time of Democritus. Next, the atoms of one element are different from the atoms of all other elements. So this is correct kasi the elements class have different types of atoms. Hydrogen atoms are different from helium atoms. Muna siyang ginamin sa statement number 2. And lastly, we have compounds are composed of atoms of more than one element. This is correct. So when you say compounds, syempre they are combination of the elements natin, atoms from our elements. So we have 2 and 3, which means the correct answer here is letter D, 2 and 3. Okay? Number 37, differentiate the subatomic particles of atoms. So subatomic particles, we are talking about protons, neutrons, and electrons. So number 1, we have protons are positively charged particles. Electrons are negatively charged particles, and neutrons are electrically neutral particles. So this one is correct. Tama, di ba? Protons, positive. Electrons, negative. Neutrons, neutral. Walang charge. Next, electrons are positively charged. This is automatically incorrect. So electrons are negatively charged. So kahit hindi pa natin basahin yung kabuuang sentence, automatically we will eliminate statement number 2. Next, protons are positively charged particles, electrons are negatively charged particles, and nucleus are electrically neutral particle. This is also incorrect. Nucleus is a part of the atom, but we are talking about subatomic particles here. So ang neutral is called the neutron. So we only have the first statement na tama. So letter B. Okay? Next, number 38, describe molecules. Again, we have here the molecules. Number 1, these are aggregate of at least 2 atoms in a definite arrangement held together by a chemical bond. This one is actually the definition of our molecules. Tinatawag lang natin siyang molecule kapag yung mga atoms natin, 2 or more atoms natin combine with each other, and when they combine, they are held together by a force which we call it chemical bond. Next, these are classified as monoatomic and diatomic molecule. This one is another correct statement. Our molecules can be classified as either monoatomic. When you say monoatomic, we have more than 2 types of atoms na nag-combine. While pag sinabing diatomic, syempre we have 2 types of molecules na nagko-combine with each other. Number 3, they show the exact number of atoms of each element in the smallest unit of a substance. Again, the third statement here, they show the exact number of atoms of each element in the smallest unit of a substance. So this is also correct. So this is 1, 2, and 3. Pag sinabing molecules, you will really see there how many atoms of each element is present in the substance or in the molecule. Next, we have a true or false question here. Ripening of a banana is a physical change. So this one, syempre, is false. If a banana ripens, or even other fruits class, that is a chemical change. You cannot turn it back to its original form kapag naging ripe na siya. Next, density is an example of extensive property. Again, density is an extensive property. This is false. Diba? Remember, density is extensive property is dependent to how much matter or how much substance you are considering. And when you say density, ang density class, it doesn't matter. Example, sa water, ang density ng tubig ay 1 gram per ml. But it doesn't matter if isa ka kabo nga tubig or nakay isa ka drum nga tubig. The density stays the same. It's 1 gram per ml. So, intensive property yan siya. Hindi siya extensive. Number 41, Kelvin is the SI unit for temperature. Again, Kelvin is the SI unit for temperature. Definitely, this is true. So, remember that Kelvin is the absolute temperature. It has the absolute zero. So that is the reason why it is considered as the SI unit. Not the Celsius, not the Fahrenheit. Next, the following are carbon-containing compounds that are considered inorganic except. Diba, pag sinabing carbon-containing compounds, we call them organic, but we have exceptions. So what are those exceptions? Number 1, the carbon monoxide, the carbon dioxide, and then those compounds that contain carbonate, so definitely sodium carbonate is also included, and those contains the cyanide. So included dito si hydrocyanic acid. So, ang hindi included here is si ethyl alcohol. But ano ba yung question? Exception. So, the following are carbon-containing compounds that are considered inorganic except. So, syempre, ang exception dito ay yung ethyl alcohol. 2 only. So, I hope nasundan pa yung pag-rationale natin ng exam. Next, which of the following pairs is incorrect? Actually, dalawa kasi yung sagot dito. So, you can either answer this one or this one. So, please check kung minalian kayo ng Schoology. Kasi, the correct answer here is 1 kilogram is equal to 100 grams. This is incorrect, class, kasi 1 kilogram is equal to 1,000 grams. So, again, please check kung minalian kayo ni Schoology kasi the answer can be this one or this one. The other two options are correct. Next, another Morse type na question. The following are examples of chemical change except. We have exception na naman dito. But let's look at the chemical changes first. Naphthalene balls disappears in air. This is an exception. Why? Kasi when naphthalene balls disappear in the air, the process is just called sublimation. Ang solid na substance naging gas automatically even if hindi siya dumaan sa pagiging liquid. So kapag phase change lang siya, physical change lang talaga siya. Okay? Next, cooking rice. Syempre, that is a chemical change when you cook rice. The same thing when you boil an egg. If you boil an egg, that is always a chemical change. Kahit pa egg pa rin yan siya, pero remember that when there is formation or breakage of a chemical bond, always yan siya, chemical change. When you boil an egg, there is breakage of chemical bonds in the proteins of the egg. So that is why meron siyang bagong identity. So hindi mo na siya mababalik sa original appearance or form niya. Next, rusting of an iron metal is another chemical change. Actually, when a metal rusts, there is the reaction of oxygen in the metal. So, kaya nagtataya siya. Chemical change yan siya. So, ano ang exception dito? One only. Naphthalene balls disappears in air. Okay? So, number 45, we have which of the following is the common name of FeCl2? Class, the question asks for the common name, not the IUPAC name. Pag IUPAC name, this is when we use iron, and then kung ibalik natin ito doon sa taas, meaning iron is 2 and then Cl is called chloride. Class, this is the systematic, or this is what we call the IUPAC name. Pero ang hinahanap ay common name. Pag common name, ito yung gumagamit ng ending na OUS and IC. So si iron, di ba, can have positive 2 or positive 3. The lower charge will take the OUS na ending, the higher charge will take the IC na ending. Now, since this is 2, meaning the lower charge siya, meaning we will call this ferrous, and then we have the word chloride. So, alin ba dito yung ferrous chloride? It's letter B. Okay? Again, the correct answer here is ferrous chloride. I hope naalala pa yan when you answered the exam last week. Now, number 46 is another Morse type na question. So we have here, evaluate the following statements. First, in dividing scientific notations, the exponents are added. This is incorrect. Why? If we divide scientific notations, remember the exponent are being subtracted. So mali siya. Next, in multiplying scientific notations, the exponents are subtracted. This is also incorrect. Baliktad sila, class. Kasi pag nagmumultiply ka, that's the time you are adding the exponent. So both statements are incorrect. Okay? Ganito din, kung hindi siya kasi naka-Morse type, naka-ganito siya sa board exam. Evaluation of the statement. So patience is a virtue. You really need to read the statements carefully, and then you have to assess whether they are correct or not. Next, evaluate the following statement. Leading zeros are always insignificant. So this is correct. Remember, hindi significant ang ating mga leading zeros. Number 2, zeros found in between non-zero digits are significant. So this is also correct. Ating mga in-between zeros are always significant. So that's both statements are correct. Okay? Next, number 48. Evaluate the following statements. 1. A compound always has definite and fixed ratio of atoms. This is correct. Remember, law of definite proportions. The law of definite proportions states that a compound always has an exact or definite na ratio of the atoms. Like when you say water, the ratio is definite, 2:1, meaning you need 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. That's fixed ratio. So this is correct. 2 elements can combine with each other to form 1 compound only. This is incorrect, class. Nganong incorrect man na siya? Kasi we have the, if number 1 is law of definite proportion, number 2, class, we have the law of multiple proportions. Pag sinabing law of multiple proportions, our elements can combine, 2 elements can combine to form many compounds. So what's our example here? Carbon and oxygen can combine first to form carbon monoxide, but they can also combine in different proportion to form carbon dioxide. Though they have different proportion, but pareho silang may carbon at may oxygen. Ang tawag natin sa law na ito ay law of multiple proportions. So that is the reason why statement number 2 is incorrect. Kasi hindi naman one compound only yung kanyang magiging result. So what's the answer? Only one is correct. Okay, now that's number 48. How about number 49? Evaluate the following statements. Number 1, a physical change involves creation and breaking of chemical bonds. This is incorrect. Nasabi ko na to kanina, pag sinabing chemical change, there is creation and breaking of chemical bonds. Hindi ito physical, instead chemical. Next, matter can be created and destroyed in a chemical reaction. This is also incorrect. Remember, we have the so-called law of conservation of mass. Anong sabi sa law of conservation of mass? Matter cannot be created nor destroyed. So, mali din yung second statement, which means the correct answer here is both statements are incorrect. Okay, incorrect. Next, which of the following pairs is incorrect? Temperature is Kelvin. This is correct. It's the SI unit. Electric current is ampere. That is also correct. Mass is gram. Remember, our SI unit for mass is kilogram. And for length, this is meter. So the correct answer here is this one. Kasi we are looking for the incorrect pair. Kasi if you are going to analyze this, the other pairs class is between the base quantity and the SI unit. Though grams can be used for mass, but kilograms class yung SI unit natin. Next, dry ice is used in fire extinguishers. Again, yung dry ice natin, which is the so-called solid na carbon dioxide, yun yung ginagamit natin sa fire extinguishers. The dry ice is stored in the cylinder in a solid form. But if you spray it on fire, it quickly changes into gas known as carbon dioxide. So what is the change in state called? Remember, solid and then naging gas. So hindi na siya dumaan sa liquid na form. We call that sublimation. Again, the process is called sublimation. Next, which of the following is true according to the law of definite proportions? So, nasabi ko na kanina yung law of definite proportions, pero let's look at the choices. Number 1, it is if the same two elements form different compounds, they do so in the same ratio. Siyempre, no. Kasi they are different compounds. So definitely they don't have the same ratio. Next, it is not possible for the same two elements to form more than one compound. This is also incorrect. Remember law of multiple proportions? Our elements can combine with each other to form multiple compounds. Next, the ratio of the masses of the elements and the compound is always the same. So this is correct. Again, the ratio of the masses of the elements in a compound is always the same. Pag water, H2O talaga yan siya. Hindi pwede si water maging H2O2. Next, the total mass after a chemical change is the same as before the change. Actually, this statement is correct, but this statement is referring to the law of conservation of mass. So the correct answer here when you say law of definite proportion, that is letter C. Always the same ang ratio pag sinasabing isang compound. Next, all of the following are characteristics of non-metals except. So non-metals, yes, they are poor conductors of electricity, often combine with each other by forming covalent bonds. This is also correct. We can combine non-metals and non-metals to form the covalent compounds, or that is what we call the molecular compounds. And then tend to form negative ions in a chemical reaction with metals. This is also correct. Remember example, NaCl. Sodium is a metal. Chloride is a non-metal. This is positively charged. This is negatively charged. So meaning our non-metals always tend to give us an ion, meaning negatively charged. And then appear in the upper left corner of the periodic table. If we draw the periodic table class, the periodic table looks like this. Remember that we have the metal here and we have the non-metal here. This is right. Nasa right, di ba? So, nasa right yung mga non-metals natin, which means this is incorrect. Kasi the left-hand corner, merong mga metals dyan. So, the answer is letter D. So, I hope nakuha nyo ito. Okay? Next, number 54. We have here, when an element loses an electron, a blank will be formed. Pag nagkaroon ng loss sa electron, meaning class, mas mataas na si protons kesa kay electron, and with that means magkakaroon ng positive na charge. So, ang tawag natin sa positively charged, di ba, cation? Pero meron din tayo dito sa choices, positively charged ion, which means the best answer here is all except B. Okay? Kasi si anion ay negatively charged. Next, Next, a 33-gram sample of red liquid at its freezing point of 260 Kelvin had a density of 0.926 grams per ml. So which of the following properties given in the previous statement is not intensive? Meaning we are looking for an example of an extensive property kasi not daw. Pag extensive property, ito yung dependent sa amount. So syempre color is not dependent. Hindi siya dependent, so intensive property yan siya. And then 33 grams, the mass is extensive property. Freezing point is also intensive. And this one, 0.926 grams per ml is density. This is also intensive, which means the correct answer here is the 33 grams. Hindi siya intensive property, extensive siya. Okay. So next, we'll have the following. Anong hinahanap? Systematic names. So systematic names, we are not going to use those that ends with OUS and IC kasi again, ang instruction ay systematic names. So the first one here, we have CCl4. If you look at this, carbon is non-metal. Chlorine is also non-metal. So we are going to use the prefixes. So the correct answer here is syempre carbon. Diba remember pag non-metal plus non-metal, hindi tayo gumagamit ng mono kapag first element siya. So automatic carbon. And then Cl4, meron siyang 4 na atom. So we will be using the prefix tetra, followed by the name chloride. So mag-e-end siya sa IDE. So this is the correct answer for number 1. Carbon, tetra, chloride. Next, S2Cl2. S2, sulfur is a non-metal. Chlorine is also a non-metal. So in this case, we are going to use the prefixes. So this is disulfur. And then dichloride. That's the correct name for number 2. Next, for number 3, arsenic. Arsenic is a metalloid. Oxygen is a non-metal. In this case, class, if it is between a metalloid and a non-metal, ang susundin natin na rule is doon sa covalent or molecular compound. Gagamit pa rin tayo ng prefixes for this one. Again, pag metalloid plus non-metal, prefixes pa rin ang gagamitin. So AS is arsenic. Remember, we don't use the prefix mono for the first element. And then we have 3 oxygen, so we will use tri. And then oxygen is called oxide. So arsenic trioxide. Okay? Lang ha. Next, we have CuO. Cu is copper, that is a metal. And then oxygen is a non-metal, so we will be using the rules for the inorganic compounds. So we have copper here. And then take note that copper is a metal na may dalawang charge. Ang dalawang charge niya, pwede siyang positive 1, pwede siyang positive 2. So dito, CuO, wala kang nakikitang subscripts dyan. So we will go back to their charges. Let's have the oxygen first. So this is equal to 0 kasi walang crisscross na naganap. That means also that copper is positive 2 para maging 0 siya. So this is copper 2 oxide. Okay? Again, please take note. Please look at your exam submissions if merong mga corrections. Kasi yung Schoology class, yung mga spaces, minamalian niya na kaagad. Kasi yung nakaset ata na answer dito is my space in between copper and the Roman numerals and also with the oxide. So kapag dinikit nyo yan siya dyan, class, mag-automatic wrong kasi yan siya. Pero it will be considered. So kaya, ang sinasabi ko ngayon, you have to listen so that you can keep track doon sa mga possible na kailangan nating i-change. Okay? Kailangan natin i-correct. Next, MgNO2, 2. So magnesium is a metal. Definitely, we will not be using a prefix here. We will just automatically write magnesium. Pero take note, class, that magnesium has only one charge. Magnesium belongs to group 2 in the periodic table. So wala siyang charge na iba. Hindi mo na kailangan gumamit ng open and close parenthesis. And then, kahit pa merong 2 dyan na subscript ha. Again, kailan lang tayo gagamit ng Roman numerals? Kapag the metal has 2 charges. So NO2 is called nitrite. Okay? So the correct answer here is magnesium nitrite. And then we have SnF2. Tin class, Sn is a metal. And it is actually a metal na dalawa ang charge. So, if we look at Sn, pwede siya positive 2, pwede siya positive 4. But this is SnF2. Meron kang subscript dyan, balik mo siya doon. That means na positive 2 si tin. So, lagyan mo siya ng ganito, Roman numerals. And then, fluorine is called fluoride. Wrong spelling wrong ito ha, fluoride is F-L-U-O-R-I-D. Hindi F-L-O-U-R. Flour yun siya. Okay? Next, NH4-2SO4. This is a combination of both polyatomic ions. And then NH4 is called ammonium. Plus, no need to write any Roman numerals because these are polyatomic ions, and SO4 is called sulfate. So automatic na siyang ammonium sulfate. Next, BaOH2. So barium, Ba is a metal. You just write barium. And take note, barium don't have 2 charges. Isa lang ang charge ni barium, positive 2 lang talaga siya. Kaya hindi ka nagagamit ng Roman numerals. Diretso ka na kay hydroxide. Barium hydroxide. That's actually the same with Na3PO4. Diretso ka na kay sodium. And then, diretso na siya phosphate. Sodium phosphate. And lastly, we have the AuI3, that is the gold. And gold is another metal na dalawa ang charge. Pwede siya positive 1, pwede siya positive 3. Now this is AuI3, meaning may subscript ka dyan, nagkaroon ng crisscross kaya pwede nating i-reverse yan siya, which means the 3 there is coming from the gold. So, lalagyan natin ito ng Roman numerals inside an open and close parenthesis. So, gold 3 iodide. Okay? So ito yung mga correct answers for the naming. Okay? So please take note, baka meron dyang minalian. Yung mga corrections mostly dito sa may mga, yung kayo yung magsusupply ng answer. So again, number 57, it is an isotope of hydrogen with 2 neutrons. Dalawang neutrons, we call it tritium. Eh, diba, hydrogen, pag wala siyang neutron, we just call it hydrogen or protium. Pero pag meron siyang neutron, we call it, kung meron siyang isang neutron, we call it heavy hydrogen or deuterium. Pero pag naging dalawa na, we call it tritium or we call it the radioactive hydrogen. Next, the SI unit for time, it's the second. Please take note kasi ang nakaset ata na answer dito is the word second. So parang minalian ata ni Schoology kung seconds or S lang yung answer ninyo. Pero we will consider that because correct pa rin naman yon. Okay? So take note niyo muna. Later na lang after this. We are almost done with the rationale. Next, it is a small dense region in an atom that contains the protons and the neutrons. So no other answers here. We have nucleus. Or if you answered atomic nucleus, that is also correct. Okay? Correct pa rin naman yan siya. That is where we can find the protons and the neutrons. Next, it is the horizontal arrangement of the elements in the periodic table. Horizontal, pahiga. We call it period. Okay? Kung ang answer nyo ay periods, we will still consider that one. Minalian yan siya ni Schoology kasi period lang yung nakaset na answer here. Pero again, we will consider that one. Next, he coined the term, ano na iti? Again, he coined the term atomos. No other answer here. We have Democritus. He was the one who first used the word atomos to describe the small indivisible particles ng matter natin. Democritus. So, this is the last one. Problem solving. So I hope na kahabol kayo sa time, na-attach niyo talaga yung answers niyo dito. So first, convert 450 Kelvin to Fahrenheit. Siyempre wala tayong direct formula. Mag-Kelvin to Celsius muna tayo. So degrees Celsius is equal to Kelvin, sige, 273. Kung may gumamit ng 0.15, sabihan niyo lang ako later ha. So 450 minus, let me write it, 273, this is 177 degrees Celsius. And then if we convert this into Fahrenheit, this is 9/5 times degrees Celsius plus 32. So this is 9/5 times 177 plus 32. This is 9 divided by 5. That's 1.8 times 177 plus 32. This is 350.6. What was the instruction? Follow the correct rules. Okay, follow the correct rules in the significant figure. We have multiplication here, so we will follow the least number of significant figures. 1, 2. We only have 2 significant figures in the given, which means we will also have 2 significant figures in the final answer. So we have, let's count, we have 1, 2. So hanggang dyan ka lang, which means the correct answer here is either 350 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 2 significant figures already, or we will just use 3.5 times 10 raised to the power of 1, 2. 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Kung gawin natin siyang scientific notation para magkaroon siya ng dalawang significant figures. Okay? For number 75 to 77, this is 2.88 times 10 raised to the power of negative 3 minus 7.0 times 10 raised to the power of negative 5. So gumamit ba kayo ng calculator dito? Pag hindi kayo gumamit ng calculator, you will do this manually, meaning mag-a-adjust tayo. Again, mag-a-adjust tayo. And then, i-adjust natin itong ikalawa para kasi minus ito, hindi mo pwedeng i-subtract agad-agad na hindi sila magkapareho ng exponent. So this will remain as is 2.88 times 10 raised to the power of negative 3, and then ito i-a-adjust natin. Gawin natin siyang negative 3, which means magmo-move tayo ng decimal places. Going to the left kasi negative ito. Mag-a-adjust tayo ng dalawa para maging negative 3 siya. So, ang ending niyan, pag nag-adjust na siya, maging 0.0, lagyan natin ng 0 dito. 70 times 10 raised to the power of negative 3 ito. Is still minus. So, we will just copy this one, negative 3. And then, lagyan natin ng 0 para mas madali. 0 minus 0 is 0, syempre. 8 minus 7 is 1. 8 minus 0 is, syempre, 8. And 2 minus 0 is 2. So, 2.810 times 10 raised to the power of negative 3. But we have to follow rules of the significant figures, right? So, since this is subtraction, ang ipa-follow natin is least number of decimal places. You have 2 decimal places here. We have 1 decimal place for the next given. So, the correct answer here should have 1 decimal place only. So, hanggang 8 ka lang. Ang correct answer nito ay 2.8 times 10 raised to the power of negative 3. Siyempre, yung nag-answer ng 2.81 or 2.810, most likely mali yung answer ninyo kasi meron tayong instruction dyan na you have to follow the correct rules sa significant figures. Okay? Now, for number 78 to 80, this is division. I hope gi-correctionan ba mo sa inyong proctor, ane? 8.56 times 10 raised to the power of negative 4. Kasi nagsabi ako na may corrections dito. This is 2.10 times 10 raised to the power of negative 2. Dapat negative 2 kasi yan siya dyan. So, i-divide. Ang ginagawa natin, let's divide this one. 8.56 divided by 2.10. This is 4.07619047.6 times 10. And then sa division, di ba, ang ginagawa natin, nagsasubtract tayo ng exponent. So, negative 4 minus negative 2 is negative 2. Pero, this is not yet the final answer kasi kailangan tayo mag-follow ng rules sa significant figures. Kailangan gamitin natin yung least number of significant figures. So, we have 1, 2, 3. So, 3 significant figures for the first given. 1, 2, 3. 3 significant figures pa rin sa second given. So, kailangan 3 significant figures yung final answer. So, you have 1, 2, and 3. Pero, the next digit is 6. So, kailangan tayo mag-plus 1 dyan. Kaya, ang correct and final answer for 78 to 80 is 4.08 times 10 raised to the power of negative 2. So that's the end for your exam sa lecture. Any question? Wala. Let me